I found that interesting. Those who try, I think, to get around it, they try to get around it. They tend to be people who have a higher view of Scripture, but I actually think their interpretation is quite strained, and I think it's, I think it's for emotional reasons at the end of the day.
Well, I'll tell you that there's been a lot of really interesting conversations right now. Gavin Ortland, I'm trying to think of all the guys who are on there. I know Chris Date, Paul Copan, Kirk Cameron, and there's another guy who hopped on. Kirk was actually the name I was having a hard time coming up with. I don't know the fourth individual in this panel, or fifth individual in this panel, but they had a really interesting discussion, and I think you would make this acknowledgement as well, Dr. Schreiner, is that there are some people. Let's take egalitarianism as an example. There are some people who come to that conclusion because they're compelled by the text. And there are other people who come to that conclusion because they feel the pressure of the cultural mores of their day and find this to be an unpalatable position. So I will acknowledge, I do think that there are people probably on both sides of the aisle that will hold eternal conscious torment or annihilationism based off of a moral standard that they hold, while others, I think, are very integrous with the text, and that they're making those conclusions based off of what they've gathered. I hold the same view that you do. I'm not quite persuaded. I'll take your line from the four views on, I think it's Women in Ministry. I don't remember the name of the book, which is, I'm better for these people's scholarship. I'm thankful for their work, even though I find their arguments not super compelling. And that was an extreme paraphrase. So I find myself in that camp
with atheist who's an overall good citizen.
Does he get the platinum package? Like premium punishment?
Well, first of all, just something you mentioned, I would say, I think fire, outer darkness, they are metaphors. I agree with John Calvin and John Piper, who both say the metaphor is intended to evoke in us a horror and a dread of the punishment to come, even if those aren't literal pictures of hell, because I don't think they are literal pictures.
I had to watch these clips 3 to 4 times to make sure that they would turn out all right, transitioning into the podcast. And as I would watch him, I could literally feel an emotion of anger just forming in my gut and then sort of rising up to my chest area. That what you just saw there, that's why evangelists are mocked. That's why evangelists are dissed. That's why Leonard Ravenhill, David Wilkerson, and Paul Washer have no respect throughout the broader group outside of their spheres of influence. It's this, let's take my thumb and my index finger and make a circle to make some sort of a philosophical point like Socrates. That this nerdy, hyper-intellectual, hyper-academic attitude about hell. Hell, where most of mankind is described in the Bible as going after they die. After they die. And for psychotherapy, for super happy giddy, not wanting to experience depression sort of reasons, we avoid this. They avoid this. Let's talk about everything. Let's talk about everything we can except for this, which to me is the ultimate discovery of theology. Because to experience God is phenomenal. But if you're consistent in your theology, a person can experience God like Samson, lose the Spirit of God, and then go to hell. Although you might say that he was restored at the end. So experiencing God is wonderful. I wrote a 400-page book on a prayer guide of how to experience God. And I believe that experiencing the witness of the Spirit is great. Charismatic gifts are great because they increase our faith in the existence of God. But people can turn away from the faith even after things like that, like Solomon did. Solomon encountered God in a dream and was given wisdom. Then he became a wizard and a sorcerer, and then he went to hell. So I believe hell is the ultimate discovery of theology. Hell is the ultimate biblical revelation, because if you cannot grasp hell, no amount of grasping the Spirit of God will ever save you from it. You must understand hell. You must understand hell fully and thoroughly and biblically. You have no business teaching the Bible without a firm, strong understanding of hell and teaching people to avoid it. And who are the people? Who is the camp that takes it seriously and literally and urges with it with proper emotional attention? It's the Church of God evangelists. It's the Church of God Cleveland evangelists. It's that camp. That's the camp that Mary Kay Baxter came from with her divine revelation of hell. That's the camp that Bill Wiese came from with 23 Minutes in Hell and his book, which is much more theological, called Hell. I wish I had included that in my bibliography on the gospel. It's the Church of God camp. Now, Bill Wiese is independent, non-denominational, charismatic. But if you really, I've been following Bill Wiese for like 20 years, and you kind of get the feeling that Church of God's been, if you're talking denominations, probably been the most supportive of that message. A literal lake of fire type hell with appropriate emotional reaction. Not this hyper-academic, let's joke with scholars, let's joke with Erasmus, let's take some sort of a humanist thing, let's joke around with scholars. Now, Mr. Schreiner is a cessationist and doesn't believe in the gifts of the Spirit. But then he says, oh, maybe I do for missionaries. I refuted Dr. Schreiner in a podcast on that already. Now Dr. Schreiner is being interviewed by the top charismatic podcast, not knowing that Dr. Schreiner is a full-blown cessationist, except, of course, in case of extreme missionaries. Why don't we just cover all of our bases? Dr. Schreiner is a professor at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, so he's a top teacher in the Southern Baptist Church. Dr. Schreiner says he gives lip service to eternal conscious punishment. And you can see the attitude. Joshua Lewis from Remnant Radio says, intellectually, as a view, I accept the view of eternal punishment, just like you do, sir. However, I could always be persuaded towards annihilationism if I was given much more convincing biblical texts. It's a view. It's a view. Hell's a view, kind of like egalitarianism versus complementarianism. It's on the same level. And it's just another theological point of view, kind of like Zondervan counterpoints. Take your pick. Would you like this view or like this view? Because it's all the same to me. Because if you want to take this view or you want to take this view, it's all the same to me. Because it's not like I'm going to preach hell or anything. It's not like I'm going to do that. It's not like I'm going to make that part of my ministry. It's not like I'm going to actually become an evangelist and actually preach about hell and actually warn people about hell like Bill Wiese does, or Billy Graham did, or God forbid David Wilkerson. No. Because, that would make you a Pentecostal preacher if you did that. That would imply that you actually believed in hell. And here's the thing. This represents the Southern Baptist, the current Southern Baptist attitude about hell. Dr. Schreiner represents it perfectly. He believes in eternal conscious punishment in the sense that he believes the Bible does not support the concept that people don't exist anymore when they die. But he refers to John Calvin, he refers to John Piper, which, like R.C. Sproul, here we go again, does not believe the fire of hell in the Bible is an actual literal picture of hell. Well, that completely undermines the whole threat. And this is where you get this lukewarm Southern Baptist message that hell is just separation from God. You kind of get this picture that people are being thrown into a cave that's really dark, and they'll just be there forever. That is ridiculous. So you get this cave hell, this mammoth cave version of hell in the Southern Baptist Church. What does Luke 16, I've got the King James Version here. What does Luke 16 say? Jesus himself said all this stuff. Luke 16:23. In hell he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off. Does that sound like he doesn't exist anymore? This is Jesus teaching about hell. Luke 16:24. And he cried. He's in pain. He's screaming. He's yelling, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I'm tormented in this flame. Do you think Jesus said it like that? I think so. I think so. I don't think that he said that in a calm, detached, academic manner. I think he said it just like that. Things get clear in Revelation 14:10-11. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. They are tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of God's angels and in the presence of Jesus. Jesus and the angels are sitting there watching them burn in fire, alive forever. And just to make sure that it's literal, a literal picture of hell, Revelation 14:11 clarifies it. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day nor night. They're not annihilated. They don't cease to exist. It's not that they don't exist anymore. No, they don't have any rest. They are sitting there in suffering. They're burning alive forever in fire. And it's such a literal picture of hell that their bodies are producing smoke, and it ascends forever and ever, Revelation 14:11. Revelation 20:10-15. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and the death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged, every man according to their works. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. Now, if you're going to be like Dr. Schreiner, the Southern Baptist professor at a Southern Baptist seminary, teaching Southern Baptist pastors that the fire of hell is not a literal picture of hell, just a symbolic metaphor of something that's different, That is unbelief in the Word of God. That is unbelief in the Word of God. Oh, I believe in hell. I just don't believe in hellfire. That's unbelief. You're unbelieving in hellfire. You're unbelieving in one of the most important, most terrifying, most cosmological spiritual threats of the Bible. And you're teaching pastors to think the same way. And if you reject the fire of hell as not a real, literal picture, you are an unbeliever in the fire of hell. And you are also probably an unbeliever in the devil, an unbeliever in the great white throne, in him that sat on it. You're an unbeliever in the dead, small and great, standing before God. You're an unbeliever in the book of life. You're an unbeliever in the sea that the dead came up out of. And you're an unbeliever in the lake of fire. Because all of those are depicted as literal here. So if you're going to reject the hell fire, you might as well reject all that other stuff. And it's dangerous atheistic teaching to reject the literal fire of hell. Because if you're doing that, what else have you got up your sleeve? That's what I want to know.